All right, so kickstarting our first podcast episode, and we already have an amazing guest today. We are so honored and privileged to be introducing Kate Goodman with us today. Hello, Kate. How are you?
I am terrific, and thank you for having me here.
Awesome. How's the weather like where you are now?
Believe it or not, we are into day 2 of winter, and I have a t-shirt on.
Very, very Penley Estate.
Not too bad. The weather's good. Starting
Good.
to cool.
Good. It's hot and humid here in Singapore. Hot. It's like an oven or a sauna. I'm very jealous of your weather right now.
It's
All
very
right.
pleasant.
Good. So Kate is, of course, the revolutionary mind behind the wines of Penley Estate from 2016 until now. Is that right?
That is so correct. Yes.
All
It's my
right.
passion for.
Perfect. So your wine journey actually began in 92, is that right? With Wirra Wirra in McLaren Vale?
Yes.
So yeah, how did you get started there?
I try not to dwell on the numbers too much because it just makes me feel like I've been doing this for a really long time. I studied biomedical science when I first left high school and rapidly realised that a white coat inside following quite strict procedures was really not going to suit my personality at all because I really like being outside. So I went and got a job in a winery, and Wirra Wirra was my first one. And then I've never left the wine industry.
That's awesome. It's exciting. It must be.
It is. It's an amazing job. The opportunity to create something new every year that is so influenced by the natural forces is, I'm really privileged to be able to do this job.
Wow, I can see you have a lot of passion for winemaking, of course. So, well, you went on to, do stints in Clare Valley and Western Victoria as well. And in 2014, you finally launched your own Goodman wines.
That's right.
Yeah, so what spurred that?
Well, I'd always had this little desire to really have my own personality really captured in some wine. And I guess through my career, as you sort of move through jobs, you become potentially a little bit less connected to what it is that you're actually doing in terms of the actual physical. So to have my own wine brand back then and make wine very much on a small scale allowed me to work with vineyards I loved and really make exactly the kind of wine that I wanted to.
I think that's the constraint, isn't it? I mean, sometimes when you work with, someone else, you don't really have full control of what you want to do.
That's right. And I think it really did sort of reignite a passion, I guess, for making wine.
Awesome. Okay, so then you went on to Penley Estate in 2016, and your first wine that you received an award was for Helios Cabernet Sauvignon. And was that right?
Yes, that is right. I've known Ang Tolley, the owner, for many decades. I first met her when I worked in McLaren Vale, and when her brother retired, she asked me to join her team to, I guess, breathe fresh air and vision into Penley Estate.
And
I
here
think
you
we've
are.
done a terrific job.
Yeah, well, I would, that is an understatement. That's a great job. So just, for our listeners there, in 2018, you were awarded the Australian Women in Wine Awards, Winemaker of the Year for Winemaker of Penley Estate in Coonawarra, of course, all while, being a mom, a partner, and of course, a survivor of breast cancer from 2017. How do you juggle all of that?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I think a few life lessons has helped me to juggle the busyness of life. don't sweat the small stuff. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I rely heavily on a very supportive partner, and he helps with everything. So asking for help, not sweating the small stuff, and working out what's important. Working out what's important so that you can get the good stuff done.
I think that's great advice. I think here in Singapore we need that. Don't sweat the small stuff.
It took me a long time to learn that lesson.
Okay. So, well, jumping right into Penley Estate. So maybe you can share a little bit more about the vineyard. So, I mean, it has a history since 1980s with the Tully siblings.
That's right. So Penley Estate is owned by the Tully siblings, who have their families. They've come from both the Penfolds family and the Tully family. So they've been involved in the wine business or the beverage businesses for generations. And in the 1980s, they decided that it would be good to have a vineyard of their own that they had established. So they found some land in Coonawarra, in a region that they really believed in, to produce amazing Cabernet, and planted the first vines on what is now known as Penley Estate. So we have 90 hectares currently planted across the property, and it's just a magical site for producing red wine.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So I assume the busiest period in Penley Estate are during harvest months. Could you walk us a little bit through that?
Sure thing. So, of course, harvest is it is the most critical, I think, the most critical time of the year. And at Coonawarra being a very cool climate, grape growing region, our harvest starts generally in early to mid-March, and then goes through until the end of April. So we're actually not long finished harvest. And for me, the most critical decision to be made through the winemaking year is, what day are we going to pick each parcel of grapes? So a typical day during harvest will probably start early with a team meeting between myself and the other winemaker that I have on site. Just a bit of a, where are we up to? What's happened from yesterday? What do we need to do? Then we'll probably have coffee before we get stuck into the day, to be quite honest. Then I like to look at vineyards in the morning before it gets too warm, and like when you're quite fresh. So we'll quite often spend hours walking up and down the rows of vineyards. And for those that like to sort of count their steps, it's an excellent way of keeping on top of your steps. Afternoons, or tasting of ferments morning and night. Lots of tasting and lots of time spent in the vineyard is pretty much how the day pans out.
Okay. Well, can you describe, visually that for us to imagine, how does, the vineyard look like for Penley Estate?
Okay. So Coonawarra is a very, it's very flat to visually look at the region. And, what happens below the surface is I think one of the secrets of the Coonawarra region, in the soil profiles and the access to underwater water resources, are what makes it a really special place. So, we have, I think it's 15 different blocks across the vineyard, across a range of grape varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon being the major grape variety, with 65% of our vineyard planted to Cabernet. Then we have some Shiraz, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. So it is quite flat, and the vines are quite old. So they've got these gnarly, chunky trunks. We have beautiful, healthy canopies, really naturally low cropping grapes. It's quite a picture, especially It's quite a picture, the vineyard.
It's a great sight to wake up to, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, most definitely. And one of the other most beautiful things about Coonawarra is, it is regional. We're 4 hours south of Adelaide, and at night it is completely dark, and the southern skies are amazing, which means we also have the most incredible sunrises and sunsets and these beautiful big open skies. It is, it really is just a picture.
Wow. Well, I can't wait for this pandemic to be over, and I think that's the first place I'm going to.
You're welcome. Come on down. We'd love to have you.
Perfect. So actually, what are you looking for? When you're harvesting during the harvest period, what are you looking for in the taste of the grapes that it's ready? So that makes you go, aha, well, this is it.
So this is something I talk about, I guess, semi-frequently with people, and it's a very difficult thing for me to articulate because it's become so intuitive and it's a real reflex to already. But we're looking for things like flavor ripeness, absolutely critical. The grapes have to have flavor. And if I talk about Cabernet, which is our most important grape variety, the tannin also needs to be ripe. So it changes from sort of being quite dry and tough to a more textural sort of feel. The seeds change colour and get a bit harder and crunchy. So when all those things are in balance, that's when you know to pick. And, it really is, I don't know, when you walk in a vineyard and you taste lots of grapes and you taste from, inside the canopy, from the outside, from exposed berries. So you try and sort of get a feel for what's happening in the entire canopy of the vineyard. And it really comes down to flavour. And the earlier we can get that flavour ripe, by that I mean the lower the sugar level, then even better.
Awesome. All right. So how do you decide the process of how the grape should be fermented in terms of the time frame? So,
well, of course, red wine grapes are fermented on the skin. So they have to go into some form of fermentation vessel. And when we're in the vineyard, we're already starting to think about where the individual parcel of grapes may end up. What wine is this potentially going to end up in? Is it looking like being one of our quite accessible Phoenix parcels, or is it going to be something more textural like our Tolma Cabernet? Or does it have the density and structure and power to sort of start heading into our high estate and estate wines? And I guess our high estate and estate wines, those parcels would be fermented naturally. They tend to be in much smaller tanks where we can really influence things. We taste every day, morning and night, to determine what we're going to do at the next step. So it's not this, it's not a recipe. It's really done by what does that juice or wine or must taste like right now, and what do we need to do to it in the next 12 hours to make it even better.
oh, wow. So it's a lot of, like foresight and experience definitely that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a standard sort of, in the back of your mind, you've got a standard procedure of what needs to be done. And then there's the opportunity to go slightly to the left or the right, depending on the flavour or the tannin or the colour or where you might want the wine to end up. For example, with our Tolma Cabernet, I like to leave that wine on skins for a really long sort of 3 to 4 weeks, because it actually changes the tannins and makes the tannins a little bit more creamy and textural. So that's sort of a decision that you make during ferments, like, is this likely to end up down in the Tolma parcel, and can we leave the wine on skins for a little bit longer?
Right. Okay. Well, so what are your first thoughts on reinventing wines in Coonawarra? Being from, in South Australia, in Clare Valley and McLaren Vale, how is it different in terms of, your grape types or your climate? Because in Coonawarra, it's Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz, isn't it? The native
Correct.
grapes.
Very Cabernet. Coonawarra is very much defined as being a red wine region, and that's not to say there aren't some wines that come out of the region, but it's very well known for its Cabernet and Shiraz. And I guess if I think about what Coonawarra Cabernet can be, those wines are really renowned for their power and tannin structure and ability to age. But when I came on board with Penley, I started really contemplating Cabernet Sauvignon much deeper. And it is a grape variety that I actually really love, because I think it's very versatile. So we've spent a long time working on different styles of Cabernet to show that it can not only be these complex, powerful, age-worthy, serious red wines, but they can also be early drinking, delicious, approachable styles of Cabernet as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's definitely different with, when you drink the Tolmer and the Timbrel, it's not, as you said, it's not something that, oh, well, I think I should drink it 10, 20 years down the road. It's more of something that you can enjoy with your, steak, like right now.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And even our Phoenix Cabernet, which is a Cabernet that is made to be drunk on release, but it will also age, 5 to 10 years. It is highly approachable. It's highly affordable. It is like that perfect all-round accessible Cabernet for everybody.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a great, when it's a everyday or everybody wine. I think it really appeals to the young or the old, and yeah. So let's jump back into, contemporary winemaking, actually.
Mhm.
So you are one of Australia's best contemporary winemaker. So can you explain to our listeners who may not know what that actually means? So what's the definition of that?
Cool. The definition of that, I mean, it could mean many things to many people, but to me, I guess it's more of an attitude. It's that approach that we have to making our wines. It's an open mind. It is anything can go. It's moving beyond just that one-trick pony style of Cabernet Sauvignon, and being aware that fresher, juicier, brighter styles are really being embraced by wine consumers, and not being afraid to make Cabernet in those styles. So I think, to me, that's contemporary. It's allowing our vineyards to shine. It's being aware of everything that Cabernet can do, and not being afraid to actually give it a go.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, I read an article where you raised the interest of Cabernet Franc to Angtali and was met with a surprise. Did you remember that?
Oh, I don't remember the article. But I do remember suggesting that we make a Cabernet Franc, which is now one of our core products. And Penley has a range of what we call project wines, and these are small parcels of, I guess, projects or experiments that we try each year. And we did a Cabernet Franc for 2 years. It sold out almost instantly. It was super popular. So we've decided, so it's since progressed, and now we make Francis every year. It's bottled as a young wine. It's this highly fragrant, perfumed, supple, juicy, delicious, spring release red wine. It can be consumed slightly chilled. To me, it reminds me of roses and Turkish delight and maybe some fresh lavender. It's a really delicious and I think awesome addition to our Penley portfolio.
Right. Well, listening to that, is that oaked? It isn't oaked Cabernet Franc, is it?
Not at all. So it's roughly 50%, 100% whole bunch fermentation, so that carbonic maceration, to get really technical. And that just brings out this beautiful, almost confectionery, pretty light sort of note. And then the rest of the Cabernet Franc is treated quite lightly because we're not really after big tannin extraction. We want it to be soft and supple. Then blended, no oak at all, stainless steel all the way.
Well, judging by
bottled maybe late June, early July.
Well, judging by your reaction, I don't think you're ever considering an oaked Cabernet Franc, are you?
We do a little bit of oaked Cabernet Franc, and it's made in quite a different style in that we are trying to get some tannin, and we add that to our Chertsey, which sits in our estate range, and that's a Bordeaux blend, and we have a little bit of Cabernet Franc in it, which really adds quite a little bit of like almost a blue flower perfumed lift to that blend.
Oh, wow. Well, would there be any other, grape types that you're considering that, Penley could add to your portfolio?
We are constantly tossing around ideas of what else could go into the vineyard. I would like a little bit of Malbec, maybe a little bit of Petit Bordeaux. So we'll see. We do have a greenfield site or an unplanted site that we have been preparing the earth, getting ready to plant. So there may be a few other bits and pieces go in the ground.
Wow, I'm sure we'll be very excited for that one.
Totally. Can't wait.
All right, well, coming back to you as a female winemaker, revolutionizing the wine scene in Australia, what are the challenges you think you face as a female winemaker in the industry? And what difference do you think that you brought to the table?
Okay, so what are the challenges? I guess winemaking sounds very glamorous, but it is very dirty work. You get sticky, get covered in muck. There's a lot, it's quite physical. So, and this goes for both men and women or males and females. You need to be fit and strong and healthy and not be afraid to get dirty because you're going to. We have a highly intensive harvest period where you pretty much need to be mentally available 24/7 for a couple of months. So that can provide challenges, particularly if you have a family. And let's face it, this will be quite controversial potentially, but a lot of parenting duties do tend to fall on the shoulders of mothers.
Oh.
So you need to have a supportive partner to allow you, but that's no different to any other industry. And I guess I've brought to the table at Penley a belief that it can be done by anybody. I have another female winemaker on site and we work really well together, and I think flexibility is also a really important part of making sure there's a balance between like our own personal lives and our work lives, and that everything can just, because if it's all in balance and in check, then everybody is happy and everything can keep moving forward.
Right. So did you think that, you changed the wine scene in any way, in your years?
Well, I'm not too sure about that. In my younger life, I worked mainly. I've actually never worked for a female manager. Always worked for male winemakers, and they've all been terrific. Maybe I've paved the way for younger female winemakers to know that they can do it, and there are opportunities for them, and it is quite achievable. I now mentor a younger female winemaker and just helping her sort of navigate, I guess, and navigate her career pathways.
Well, that is a great legacy that you've set behind. That's amazing. It's great. Well, just a couple more questions. So the wine scene here in Singapore is definitely on the rise. Millennials and Gen Y are increasingly showing interest in wine, but the tricky part is having them explore, vineyards or grape types outside of, usual Cabernet Sauvignon. Is there anything that you can, kind of recommend or tips on how to venture out there and explore,
My tips would be to be brave and open-minded and find a wonderful wine merchant or sommelier that you actually trust and allow them to guide you. And if they recommend wine and you take it and have and drink it and you love it, tell them, because then they can, really start to push you in directions that perhaps you didn't even know existed. So I think it's that, be courageous and open-minded, but also trusting of the experience that is around you to provide you the opportunity to taste beyond what is known.
That's great. Yeah. Well, wrapping up this interview, what is your favorite region for wine or favorite grape varietal?
How do I choose just one?
You can't be biased though.
That's, that's impossible for me to choose either one variety or one region, because I like to drink wine from around the world. I like red wine, white wine, sparkling wine. I love the wines from Italy. I love their sort of quite savoury, textural structure. I love drinking Chardonnay. I like all wine that is good quality wine.
That is very true.
I can't narrow it down. And I'm not going to be biased and say Coonawarra, because that's just, it's basically not true. I like too many other regions as well as Coonawarra.
Well, yes, you got to add that one in, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Well, all right. Thank you for your time, Kate. I think that is all we have today. We appreciate your time. Keep doing what you're doing. And we're very excited for what's to come for Penley and yourself.
Thank you so much for having us here and supporting Penley Estate, and look forward to doing something with you in person one day.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you soon, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.